So let's talk about another part of Europe, Central Europe this time. The European Union's kind of culture war, legal battle with Hungary and Poland has gone to the next stage. The European Court of Justice has essentially ruled that it's okay for the EU to withhold funds from countries like Hungary and Poland if they're seen to be breaking the EU's core values in some way. I mean, this has some potentially very serious consequences, particularly with the Hungarian elections coming up in April. Tom, what have you made of it?
Well, as you say, it's just a kind of another moment in that kind of ongoing battle between Brussels and between these kind of wayward Central and Eastern European states as it sees it. So Hungary and Poland losing this legal challenge. It's one specific mechanism by which this is happening, as you were saying, kind of it being the ECJ ruling it's legitimate to deprive these countries of these funds if it doesn't meet these rule of law standards and all the rest of it. But there's various different mechanisms, there's various different arguments. The broader context is over everything from, again, the kind of questions about the independence of the judiciary in Poland. In Hungary, you have this big blow up over the promotion of LGBT to under 18s. So they've tabled a new law last year, which caused huge consternation. I mean, you had Mark Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, suggesting that Hungary had to be brought to its knees over this, and it had no business being in the European Union. So at its core, it is this argument over self-determination as to whether or not, by dint of being a member of the European Union, that Brussels can dictate and force you to walk a certain line, not only in terms of, say, the setup of your trade or the economic regulations you might follow, but even your values, really, how you happen to run your country, the nature of your state and all the rest of it, even down to these kinds of moral questions, effectively. And as you say, particularly with the Hungarian election approaching, that this being of huge significance for the broader EU project, because there is this huge kind of rogues gallery coalition of everyone from the far left to actual fascists who have teamed up to try and topple Orban. There's a genuine sense that this would be a huge win for Orban if he goes. And so, of course, the message that is clearly being sent is to suggest, we are willing to deprive Hungary of these funds. So therefore, if you want your coronavirus support money, which is being withheld from Hungary and Poland at the moment, you better do the right thing come April. So it's incredibly serious. But at the core of it, aside from the kind of technical niceties, if you like, is this question of self-determination, which we all know is the EU's probably least favourite thing.
Ella?
Yeah, the question is, which do you prefer? The problems going on within Poland and Hungary, considerable issues of Orban supposedly giving out money to his friends and family rather than, and kind of soaking up all bids for money for institutions and projects in a kind of cronyistic attempt, and that being a problem with democracy. Or what's going on within the European Union, which is, as Tom points out, heads of state, but indeed MEPs going around and saying, hang on a minute, we have to do something about these pesky Hungarians and what's going on in this nation, sort it out. Both have questions around who has democratic control, who has political control in a country. And we've always argued that whatever happens within nation states, and certainly in the UK, we're no fans of the British government, it's always better to be able to hold the country, the government that rules your country, to account, rather than unelected institutions like the ECJ, like the EU. There is a real arrogance also towards the way in which the kind of discussion about funds is being had. The fact that it's now a part of the larger budget, but the fact that initially it was the suggestion that coronavirus relief funds would be withheld. I mean, that's pretty dark, particularly in countries like Hungary and Poland, which haven't had as many resources as other European nations, of which, particularly in relation to vaccine rollouts and stuff, there is still a problem. Withholding relief at a time when the European Union's meant to be portraying itself as this great kind of benevolent international kind of big warm hug of an institution that helps out all its nations punctures that. But also the kind of idea that there's been reports, kind of scathing reports from one a while ago by Timothy Garton-Ash in The Guardian, about the idea that all these sort of, particularly in Hungary, these Hungarians, they're a bit stupid, a bit like Brexit voters. They like to take EU money and they're fine with being funded by them, but they never wave any flags. And when you go to Orban rallies, they're also disparaging of the EU. And don't they realise? It was a bit like what was said to kind of people in the UK, don't you know you get all your money for farming from the EU, so why are you voting against it? There's a misunderstanding of the nature of the force that the EU has, the kind of political sway it has, but also the fact that there's a kind of nations are stuck between a rock and a hard place because of the fact of the imposition of the political power and financial power that the European Union has. So, pick your bad democracy. One, despite the fact that Orban's gone some way to making elections tricky, that you can deselect at the ballot box, or people who you'll never meet who sit in closed doors in Brussels conspiring to overturn your elected leaders.